So this is where we're headed. We're going to model out this ring, and this is going to be by far the most basic one. But this chapter is mainly designed to show you guys the overall workflow of everything that we've been talking about so far in the most basic terms. So the ring geometry and the text is actually going to be texture, and then all we need is essentially this base mesh right here. So in terms of modeling workflows, the ones that we're primarily going to be working with right now are going to be box modeling and sub-D modeling. So box modeling is kind of confusing. This really should be called something like primitive, start with a primitive modeling, or combined primitive modeling. But it's just generally referred to as box modeling. So before we get started, I'm just going to go and import a scale reference. So it's important to model everything to scale, and we'll talk about that as we go. But right now, we're in our scene like this. Right now, we have no constant. We have no, like, this camera, this light, this grid. These things could be really arbitrary values. These are all 1 meter big, but if we bring in an object, it'll help us model to that. So we'll go to import. We'll do import.obj, and then inside of the starter kit will be this 6-foot man object. So go ahead and import that. Now we got this guy right here. I'm just going to move him to the side for now. And basically the way I like to work is I like to model first, make sure my proportions are looking good for my specific asset. And then once I have all of my assets done, I'll go ahead and scale everything then. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll just rename this 6-foot man and then hide him like that. And then from here, what we want to do is we want to start modeling a ring. So I'm just going to do a new collection, and this will essentially be the start of us creating assets. So every time we create a new asset, I'm going to put it into a new collection. That's going to help us with organization. So while this is selected, I'm going to go in here and just hit Shift-A, go into Mesh, and go into Cylinder. While this is selected, I'm just going to make sure I have my vertices set to 16. It's set to 32 by default, so I'll just go ahead and set this to 16. Go ahead and drop this menu. And now we're just working on just getting our initial scale done. So I'll go ahead and just scale this in like this. And after we scale it, the very first thing that we're going to always want to do once we get it set up good proportionally is lock down our transform. So we'll just apply all transforms so that our scale goes back down to 1. Again, that's to make sure that the modeling operations are not skewed. So I'll hit Tab to go into edit mode, 3 to go into my faces. And then out from here, what I'll do is I'll go into my inset faces. So I'll click on this and just move this in just like that. So you can think of this as kind of like an extrude, but we're doing it inside of the face. And then from here, while we have both of these selected, we'll just hit X and then we'll do delete faces. Now essentially we'll have all of this information in here. And now what we can do is essentially bridge these things together. So we'll just go ahead and jump into 2. To go to edge mode, I'll alt click here, and then I'll shift alt click here to select that bottom edge loop. And then from here, what we can do is just go into our edges and bridge edge loops. And that's just going to connect all of those edges together. So from here, we can see that, we got this very polygonal looking shape, and we want to jump into sub-D mode. And we talked a bit about this before. Sub-D modeling essentially is when we model a cage and then we subdivide on top of that. So we'll go into our modifiers and then add modifier and then add subdivision surface. So you can think of this as a modeling operation that is being performed on top of this. So it's going to be non-destructive. So if we hit Tab, we'll still have our cage like this. And then our subdivision surface is going to be applied on there. A general overview of how this works is we have a couple different things here. We have this display icons here, so we can display in the render or not, display in the viewport or not, and display in edit mode or not. So you'll see that I use these quite a bit. For now, I'm just going to leave them all on. I'm going to do maybe 2 viewport to just kind of make this consistent. You'll notice that we're still getting these really hard edges right there. So if we want to fix that, we have to jump back into object mode. So I hit Tab to go into object mode, and then right click and do shade smooth. That's just going to smoothen that out. And then if we want this to be a little less curved, we can add in edge loops. So I'll go into Tab edit mode, and then I'll go into my loop cut right here, or we can hit Control R. I'll hit Control R and I'll just click right here. And then you'll notice that it's going to ask us to click again to confirm. If we just want to center, all we have to do is just hit escape and it'll center that edge loop. And that's that. And then just to clean this up, I'm just going to call my cylinder ring. So to recap that was just a very basic example of box modeling, a very basic example of sub D modeling.